Hello, and welcome back to another quiet journey through science. It's good to have you here tonight. Right now, as you listen to this, something extraordinary is happening inside you. While you prepare for rest, 37 trillion cells are waking up. They're beginning their real work, the work they can only do when you stop moving. Your body doesn't sleep the way you think it does. In fact, the moment you close your eyes, you become busier than you've ever been while awake. Before we drift into this hidden world together, if you find comfort in these gentle explorations of science, you might like to stay a while. You can softly tap the like button, subscribe if you'd like more stories told this way, and ring the little bell, not for noise, but so the next quiet night can find you again. Thank you for being here. Now let's begin. Tonight we're going to follow the secret night work of your cells, the invisible symphony that plays while you dream. We think of sleep as shutting down, as powering off as absence. But sleep is the opposite of absence. Sleep is when your body remembers how to be whole again. It's when the real healing happens, when memories are filed away, when toxins are washed clean, when every system you barely noticed during the day finally gets its turn to speak. Some nights you might lie awake wondering if sleep even matters. The world tells you to push through to work harder to sleep when you're dead. But your cells know differently. They've been doing this for millions of years, this ancient rhythm of rest and repair. They know that without these quiet hours, you begin to fall apart in ways you can't see until it's too late. Scientists have spent decades trying to understand why we sleep. For a long time, it seemed wasteful 8 hours of vulnerability, of stillness, of not hunting or gathering or surviving. But the more we look inside the sleeping body, the more we realize sleep isn't rest at all. It's transformation. It's the body's second shift, the one that keeps you alive. There's a moment about 90 minutes after you fall asleep when your brain waves slow into deep rolling rhythms. Your heart rate drops. Your breathing becomes steady and soft. And in that moment, your brain does something remarkable. It shrinks. Not by much, just enough. The space between your neurons expands by nearly 60%. And through those widening gaps, cerebrospinal fluid begins to flow like a quiet river through a canyon, washing away the debris of the day. This is called the glymphatic system, and it was only discovered in 2012. For all of human history, we didn't know our brains cleaned themselves. We didn't know that every thought you had today left behind tiny protein fragments, waste products that would become toxic if they stayed too long. We didn't know that sleep was the only time your brain could flush them out, the only time it could run its own maintenance cycle. Think about that for a moment. Your brain, the most complex structure in the known universe, can only clean itself when you're unconscious. It's like a city that waits until 3 a.m. to send out the street sweepers when the traffic finally stops, and the work can actually get done. During the day, your neurons are firing, constantly talking to each other, forming connections, processing the world. There's no space for cleanup, but at night, when you stop demanding so much from your brain, it can finally breathe. The cells shrink slightly, pulling back from each other, and the fluid moves in, carrying away fragments of proteins called beta amyloid and tissue, the same proteins that build up in the brains of people with Alzheimer's disease. Research shows that people who sleep fewer than 6 hours a night have significantly more of these proteins accumulating in their brains. Sleep deprivation doesn't just make you tired. It lets toxins pool in the place you think, with the place you remember, with the place you are. But it's not just your brain that comes alive at night. Every system in your body has been waiting for this moment. Your muscles, which spent all day contracting and tearing and holding you upright, finally get their repair orders. Around midnight, your pituitary gland releases a surge of growth hormone, the chemical signal that tells your cells to rebuild. Protein synthesis doubles. Tiny molecular machines called ribosomes start working overtime, stitching together amino acids into the exact proteins your body needs to patch the microscopic damage from the day. This is why children sleep so much more than adults. They're not just resting, they're literally building themselves, adding new cells, new tissue, new height. And this is why athletes who sleep 8 hours recover faster than those who sleep 6. the repair happens, or it doesn't, depending entirely on whether you give your body the time it needs. Even your skin is working while you sleep. Collagen production peaks between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. Blood flow to your skin increases, bringing oxygen and nutrients to cells that spent the day defending you from sunlight and pollution. There's a reason they call it beauty sleep. It's not a metaphor, it's biochemistry. Studies have shown that people who are sleep deprived have more fine lines, uneven pigmentation, and reduced skin elasticity compared to those who sleep 7 to 9 hours. Your skin ages faster when you don't sleep, not because of time, but because the repair crews never got their shift. And then there's your immune system, your body's quiet army, always scanning, always ready. During the day, it patrols watching for invaders, but at night, it does something different. It learns, it builds, it remembers. Between 2 and 3 a.m., the production of cytokines, small proteins that coordinate immune responses, reaches its peak. Your T cells. The soldiers of your adaptive immune system become more active. They circulate through your lymph nodes, checking for threats, updating their internal database of what's dangerous and what's safe. This is why you feel feverish at night when you're sick. Your body raises its temperature on purpose, creating an environment where your immune system works faster and viruses replicate slower. The fever isn't the sickness. The fever is the healing. In one remarkable study, researchers gave people a hepatitis vaccine and then tracked their sleep. Those who slept normally after the vaccine produced twice as many antibodies as those who were kept awake. The immune system had learned, but only if sleep was allowed to finish the lesson. Sleep isn't passive. Sleep is when your body does the work it can't do, while you're asking it to move and think and perform. Sleep is when the hidden systems, the ones you never consciously control, finally get their moment. And here's the strange, beautiful truth. You don't have to understand any of this for it to happen. You don't have to think about your glymphatic system, or your protein synthesis, or your circulating T cells. You just have to stop. You just have to let go, and your body remembers what to do. For millions of years, long before we had language or science or alarm clocks, our ancestors slept when the sun went down. They didn't question it. They didn't fight it. They knew in some deep, unspoken way that the darkness was a gift, that rest was sacred, that the body needed time away from the world to remember itself. We've forgotten that now. We've built a world that never sleeps, that tells us rest is laziness, that 8 hours is a luxury we can't afford. But your cells don't care about productivity. They care about survival. And they're trying to tell you every single night that without this time, without these quiet hours of invisible work, you start to break down in ways that can't be undone. You are not a machine that can run forever. You are a living system, ancient and intricate, and you need the night just as much as you need the day. So, tonight as you begin to drift, know that you're not shutting down. You're opening up. You're letting 37 trillion tiny workers begin their shift. And they will take care of you the way they always have, the way they always will, as long as you give them the time. But your cells don't work alone. They don't clean randomly or repair by chance. Every night, there's an order to the work, a priority list written into your biology. And it begins with the most important place of all, the place where everything you are is stored and sorted and slowly made sense of. Let's step into that hidden room, now the one that only opens when the lights go out. Your brain weighs about 3 pounds, roughly 2% of your body weight, but it uses 20% of your energy. All day long, it burns through glucose and oxygen, firing billions of signals every second. And with all that activity comes waste. Tiny fragments of proteins, metabolic debris, chemical byproducts that would be toxic if they stayed too long. For most of your life, scientists didn't know how the brain got rid of this waste. They knew the body had a lymphatic system, a network of vessels that drains fluid and filters out toxins. But the brain seemed to have nothing like it. The brain appeared sealed off, protected by something called the blood-brain barrier, isolated from the body's usual cleanup systems. It was a mystery that lasted more than a century. Then in 2012, a neuroscientist named Maken Nedergaard and her team at the University of Rochester made a discovery that changed everything. They found that the brain does have a waste removal system, but it only turns on at night. They called it the glymphatic system, a name that combines glia, the support cells of the brain, and lymphatic, because it works like the body's drainage network, except this one operates in the space between your thoughts. Here's how it works. During the day, your neurons are tightly packed, constantly communicating, building networks, processing information. There's barely any room between them. But when you fall into deep sleep, something remarkable happens. Your brain cells actually shrink, pulling back from each other by about 60%. It's not damage, it's intentional. The cells are making space-opening channels, creating room for something to flow through. Cerebrospinal fluid, the clear liquid that cushions your brain and spinal cord, begins to pulse through these newly opened spaces. It moves in waves, washing over the surfaces of neurons, picking up the waste that accumulated during the day. It collects fragments of beta amyloid, a sticky protein that, if left to build up, forms the plaques found in Alzheimer's disease. It gathers tau proteins, which in excess become the tangles that strangle neurons from the inside. It sweeps away oxidative stress molecules, lactate broken down neurotransmitters, all the tiny chemical leftovers of a day spent thinking. This fluid flows along pathways surrounding blood vessels, moving from the surface of the brain deep into its interior, then draining out through veins that eventually carry the waste to the liver and kidneys, where it can be filtered from the body entirely. The whole process is like a nocturnal tide rising and falling in rhythm with your sleep cycles, cleaning the very organ you use to understand the world. And here's the critical part. This only happens during sleep. Specifically during deep, slow-wave sleep, the kind you get in the first half of the night, when your brain waves stretch out into long, rolling rhythms. If you don't sleep deeply enough or long enough, the cleaning doesn't finish. The waste starts to accumulate day after day, year after year, like a house where no one ever takes out the trash. In one study, researchers kept mice awake for extended periods and then examined their brains. The buildup of beta amyloid was dramatic, significantly higher than in mice that had slept normally. Another study in humans used PET scans to measure beta amyloid levels in people who had been awake for just one night. Even a single night of sleep deprivation led to measurable increases in amyloid in regions of the brain critical for memory and cognition. This isn't just about feeling tired. This is about the slow accumulation of substances that are neurotoxic, that interfere with the way your neurons talk to each other, that over time can lead to cognitive decline, memory loss, and diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. Sleep, it turns out, is not optional maintenance. It's essential housekeeping. There's a reason why chronic sleep deprivation is linked to a higher risk of dementia later in life. A study that followed more than 8,000 people over 25 years found that those who consistently slept 6 hours or less in their 50s and 60s had a 30% higher risk of developing dementia compared to those who slept 7 hours. The brain needs those nightly cleanings. Without them, it slowly drowns in its own byproducts. Think of it this way. During the day, your brain is a bustling city full of traffic and noise and constant movement. Waste piles up on the streets, but there's no time to clean it. The city is too busy functioning. But at 2 a.m., when the traffic stops, when the lights dim, the street sweepers come out. They move through the empty avenues, washing away the debris, clearing the pathways, making sure the city can wake up functional again. Your brain is that city, and sleep is the only time the sweepers can do their work. But not all sleep is equal when it comes to this cleaning process. The glymphatic system is most active during deep non-REM sleep, the stage where your brain waves slow down into delta rhythms, where your body is still and your awareness is at its lowest. If your sleep is fragmented, if you wake up frequently, if you never drop into that deep restorative stage, the cleaning is incomplete. The waste removal slows. The buildup begins. This is one of the reasons why sleep apnea, a condition where breathing repeatedly stops and starts during the night, is so dangerous. People with untreated sleep apnea rarely reach deep sleep. They spend the night cycling through lighter stages, jolted awake over and over by their own lack of oxygen. Their glymphatic systems never fully engage. Studies show that people with severe sleep apnea have higher levels of beta amyloid and tau in their brains and a significantly increased risk of Alzheimer's. The same is true for people who drink alcohol before bed. Alcohol might make you feel drowsy, but it suppresses deep sleep. It keeps your brain in the lighter stages where the glymphatic flow is minimal. You might be unconscious, but your brain isn't getting cleaned. You wake up feeling foggy, not just because of dehydration, but because your neurons are still swimming in yesterday's waste. Researchers have also found that sleeping position matters. In studies on rodents and more recently in humans, sleeping on your side appears to enhance glymphatic clearance compared to sleeping on your back or stomach. The theory is that the side position optimizes the flow of cerebrospinal fluid through the brain's drainage pathways. It's a small factor, but it's one more piece of evidence that sleep is an active mechanical process, not just a passive shutdown. And here's something that might surprise you. The glymphatic system doesn't just remove toxins, it also distributes essential nutrients. Glucose, amino acids, lipids, neurotransmitters, all the building blocks your brain needs to function, are delivered through this same fluid network. So when you sleep, your brain isn't just cleaning itself, it's also restocking, replenishing, preparing for the demands of the next day. Sleep is both the janitor and the delivery service working in tandem to keep your neurons healthy. There's something humbling about this, isn't there? The idea that your brain, the thing you rely on for every decision, every memory, every moment of consciousness, is utterly dependent on something you can't control, something that only happens when you let go completely. You can't think your way into cleaning your brain. You can't will the glymphatic system to work faster. You just have to sleep. You just have to trust that your body knows what it's doing. And your body does know. It's been doing this for as long as brains have existed. Long before we understood neurons or proteins or Alzheimer's disease, our ancestors slept deeply through the night, and their brains cleaned themselves, and they woke up ready to think and remember and survive another day. We've inherited that same system, that same nightly ritual of rest and renewal. The only difference is now we're choosing to ignore it. We live in a world that treats sleep like a weakness, that celebrates the person who survives on 4 hours and a pot of coffee, that sees rest as something you do when the work is finished, which it never is. But your brain doesn't care about deadlines or productivity. It cares about staying functional. And without those hours of deep, uninterrupted sleep, it can't. So, tonight as you feel yourself slipping towards sleep, imagine those channels opening those spaces, widening that quiet river of fluid beginning to flow. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to try. Your brain will take care of itself the way it always has, as long as you give it the time. But the brain isn't the only part of you working through the night. While the cleaning crews move through your neurons, something else is being built, molecule by molecule, in every tissue, every muscle, every cell that spent the day breaking down. The construction happens next, and it happens faster than you'd ever imagine. Every cell in your body is a factory, and at night production doubles. While you sleep, tiny molecular machines called ribosomes work faster than they ever do during the day, stitching together chains of amino acids into the exact proteins your body needs to repair itself. Muscle fibers torn during a workout, skin cells damaged by sunlight, hair follicles preparing for growth, all of them waiting for the signal that only comes when you stop moving. That signal arrives around midnight, carried by a surge of growth hormone from your pituitary gland. And when it does, your body begins to rebuild itself, molecule by molecule in the quiet hours before dawn. Protein synthesis is the invisible architecture of life. Proteins are not just nutrients you eat, they are the structures that hold you together. They are the enzymes that drive every chemical reaction in your body. They are the receptors on cell surfaces that let signals pass through. They are the antibodies that recognize invaders. They are the collagen that keeps your skin firm and your joints flexible. They are the actin and myosin filaments that let your muscles contract. Without constant protein synthesis, you would simply fall apart. But here's the remarkable thing. Your body doesn't make proteins at a steady rate throughout the day. Protein production follows a rhythm tied to your circadian clock, and it peaks dramatically during sleep. Studies using radioactive tracers have shown that the rate of muscle protein synthesis is nearly twice as high during sleep compared to waking hours, even if you're lying still during the day. The difference isn't activity. The difference is the hormonal environment of sleep. Growth hormone is the master conductor of this process. During the day, your pituitary gland releases growth hormone in small, irregular pulses. But at night, roughly an hour after you fall asleep, there's a massive surge. This pulse can account for up to 70% of your daily growth hormone secretion. And it happens almost exclusively during the deepest stage of non-REM sleep, the same stage where your glymphatic system is flushing out toxins. Your body is cleaning and rebuilding at the same time, running parallel shifts of maintenance and construction. Growth hormone doesn't build proteins directly. Instead, it travels through your bloodstream to your liver, where it triggers the release of another hormone called insulin-like growth factor 1, or IGF-1. IGF-1 is the actual signal that tells your cells to start synthesizing proteins to take the amino acids floating in your blood and assemble them into the structures you need. Muscle cells respond by building new contractile fibers. Bone cells respond by laying down fresh mineral matrix. Skin cells respond by producing collagen and elastin, the proteins that keep your skin smooth and resilient. This is why children and teenagers sleep so much more than adults. They're not just resting, they're literally growing, adding height, adding mass, building bodies that didn't exist the day before. In children, growth hormone pulses are even larger than in adults, and the rate of protein synthesis is higher across the board. Adolescents who don't sleep enough don't just feel tired, they grow more slowly. Their bodies can't complete the construction they started. But even if you're not growing taller anymore, you're still rebuilding. Every day your body breaks down a small percentage of its proteins through normal wear and tear. Enzymes degrade. Structural proteins get damaged. Muscle fibers develop micro tears from movement, even just from walking or standing. If you don't replace what's lost, you slowly waste away. This is why bedridden patients lose muscle mass so quickly, and why astronauts in zero gravity, despite eating enough protein, experience muscle atrophy. It's not just about use, it's about the repair that happens during sleep, the nightly reconstruction that keeps you whole. Athletes have known this intuitively for a long time, even before the science caught up. Recovery, they will tell you, is as important as training. You don't get stronger in the gym, you get stronger in bed. The weights create the damage, the microscopic tears in muscle fibers that signal the need for growth. But the actual growth happens while you sleep. Studies on athletes show that those who sleep 8 hours a night build muscle faster, recover from soreness more quickly, and perform better than those who sleep 6 hours, even if their training and nutrition are identical. The difference is the time given to protein synthesis, the hours when ribosomes are working at full capacity. In one study, researchers restricted sleep in healthy young men to 5.5 hours per night for a week, while they followed a weight training program. Compared to men who slept 8.5 hours, the sleep-deprived group gained 60% less muscle mass, even though they trained just as hard and ate the same amount of protein. The building blocks were there. The stimulus was there. But without adequate sleep, the construction couldn't finish. And it's not just muscle. Your skin is rebuilding every night too. Collagen production. The protein that gives skin its structure and elasticity peaks between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. Blood flow to the skin increases during sleep, delivering oxygen and nutrients to cells that spent the day defending you against UV radiation pollution and oxidative stress. This is why a single night of poor sleep makes your skin look dull and tired. It's not just puffiness or dark circles, it's the absence of repair. Your skin didn't get the resources it needed to rebuild itself. Long-term sleep deprivation accelerates skin aging in measurable ways. A study conducted by University Hospital's Case Medical Center found that people who slept poorly had more fine lines, uneven pigmentation, and reduced elasticity compared to those who slept well. When researchers assessed the skin's ability to recover from UV exposure, the well-rested group showed significantly faster healing and less redness. Their skin was literally better at repairing damage because it had been given the time and resources to do so every night. Even your hair and nails grow faster when you sleep well. Hair follicles are some of the most rapidly dividing cells in your body, and they rely on a constant supply of proteins to produce keratin, the structural protein that makes up hair and nails. Growth happens in cycles, but the active growth phase is fueled by the same nightly surge of growth hormone and IGF-1 that rebuilds your muscles and skin. People with chronic insomnia often report brittle nails and thinning hair, not because they're deficient in nutrients, but because their cells aren't getting the hormonal signals they need to grow. There's also fascinating research on wound healing. In multiple studies, sleep-deprived individuals take significantly longer to heal from surgical incisions burns, and even small experimental wounds compared to people who sleep normally. One study found that wound healing was slowed by up to 40% in people who slept fewer than 6 hours a night. The reason is straightforward. Healing is protein synthesis. Closing a wound requires new collagen, new blood vessels, new skin cells, all of which must be built from scratch using the same pathways that operate during sleep. Hospitals are starting to take this seriously. Some surgical recovery protocols now emphasize sleep as part of postoperative care, recognizing that patients who sleep well after surgery have fewer complications, less pain, and shorter hospital stays. Sleep isn't comfort, it's medicine. It's the biological process that lets the body knit itself back together. But here's a mistake many people make. They think they can compensate for poor sleep by eating more protein, by taking supplements, by forcing nutrients into their system. And while adequate protein intake is necessary, it's not sufficient. You can eat all the amino acids in the world, but if you're not sleeping, your ribosomes aren't working efficiently, your growth hormone isn't surging, and your cells aren't getting the signal to build. It's like delivering construction materials to a building site, but never hiring the workers. The materials just sit there unused. There's also a common belief that you can catch up on sleep during the weekend, that you can deprive yourself all week and then repair the damage with 2 long nights. But protein synthesis doesn't work that way. The damage to muscle, skin, and other tissues accumulates daily. And if it's not repaired promptly, it becomes harder to reverse. Chronic sleep debt leads to chronic underrepair, a slow erosion of your body's ability to maintain itself. 2 good nights don't undo 5 bad ones. The deficit lingers. And there's another layer to this. Protein synthesis isn't just about building, it's also about quality control. Inside every cell, there are systems that check newly made proteins to make sure they're folded correctly, that they're functional, that they won't cause harm. Misfolded proteins are dangerous. They can clump together, interfere with cellular processes, and contribute to diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. Sleep supports the quality control systems too. During sleep, cells ramp up the production of chaperone proteins, molecular helpers, that guide other proteins into their correct shapes and mark defective ones for destruction. When you don't sleep, this quality control weakens. More misfolded proteins slip through. More cellular debris accumulates. The body doesn't just fail to build, it builds poorly, creating structures that don't work as well, that break down faster, that leave you more vulnerable to disease and aging. Think about what this means over a lifetime. Every night you sleep well is a night your body rebuilds itself, properly maintains its structures, keeps its systems running smoothly. Every night you don't is a missed opportunity, a small accumulation of damage, a tiny step toward breakdown. Sleep isn't just rest. Sleep is construction. Sleep is the difference between a body that lasts and a body that fails too soon. Your cells are working right now, or they will be soon as you drift deeper into sleep. Ribosomes are lining up amino acids, stitching them into chains, folding them into shapes that will become the proteins you need for strength, for healing, for simply being alive. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to will it to happen. You just have to sleep and your body will remember how to rebuild itself. But while your muscles and skin are being constructed from the inside, something else is stirring something you might not expect. An entire army is waking up, preparing for its own secret work. A patrol that only happens when the world goes quiet and you finally stop asking your body to perform. Your immune system never sleeps, but it doesn't work the same way all day and all night. During the day, it patrols watching for threats, responding to immediate dangers, keeping you functional while you move through the world. But at night, something shifts. Between 2 and 3 a.m., when your body is deepest in sleep, your immune system stops simply reacting and starts learning. Building, preparing for battles it hasn't fought yet. This is when your body's defenses become their strongest, when the army inside you drills and trains and remembers turning every encounter with a virus or bacteria into knowledge that could save your life months or years from now. The connection between sleep and immunity has been observed for as long as humans have gotten sick. You've probably noticed it yourself. When you're fighting off a cold or the flu, all you want to do is sleep. Your body forces you to rest sometimes so powerfully that you can't stay awake even if you try. This isn't weakness, this is strategy. Sleep is when your immune system works most efficiently, when it can devote full resources to fighting infection without having to compete with all the other demands of being awake. Fever is part of this strategy too. When you're sick, your body temperature rises at night, often spiking in the early morning hours. This isn't random. Research suggests that your immune system deliberately raises your temperature during sleep because higher temperatures make your immune cells more effective and slow down the replication of viruses and bacteria. The fever feels miserable, but it's your body creating an environment where healing happens faster. Night is when the battle intensifies, when your immune system stops holding back and goes to work with everything it has. But even when you're healthy, your immune system is more active at night than during the day. Studies have shown that the production of cytokines, small signaling proteins that coordinate immune responses, reaches its peak during sleep. Cytokines are like messengers telling immune cells where to go, what to attack, how aggressive to be. Some cytokines promote inflammation, which sounds bad, but is actually necessary for fighting infections and healing injuries. Others are anti-inflammatory, calming the system down once the threat is gone. The balance between these signals is delicate, and it's regulated by your circadian rhythm, the internal clock that tells your body what time it is and what it should be doing. One of the most important immune cells, the T cell, becomes significantly more effective during sleep. T cells are part of your adaptive immune system, the branch that learns and remembers specific threats. When a T cell encounters a pathogen, it doesn't just attack, it also records information about that pathogen, so your body can respond faster if it ever shows up again. This is the basis of immunological memory, the reason you usually only get chickenpox once the reason vaccines work. But here's the surprising part. T cells are better at forming these memories when you're asleep. Researchers have found that during sleep, T cells express higher levels of a type of molecule called integrins, which help them stick to infected cells and destroy them more effectively. Sleep also enhances the movement of T cells into lymph nodes, the small organs scattered throughout your body, where immune cells gather to communicate and coordinate. In your lymph nodes, T cells meet other immune cells, exchange information about threats they've encountered, and fine-tune their responses. This communication happens all the time, but it's more efficient during sleep when your body isn't distracted by the demands of staying awake. There's a remarkable study that illustrates just how much sleep affects immune function. Researchers in Germany gave volunteers a hepatitis A vaccine, then divided them into two groups. One group was allowed to sleep normally after the vaccination. The other group was kept awake all night. 4 weeks later, the researchers measured the antibody levels in both groups, the proteins that provide long-term protection against the virus. The group that had slept after the vaccine had nearly twice as many antibodies as the group that had been kept awake. Same vaccine, same people, same amount of time, but the immune response was dramatically different, depending on whether they had slept. Sleep didn't just make them feel better, it made their immune system learn better. This finding has profound implications for public health. It suggests that if you want a vaccine to work as effectively as possible, you need to sleep well in the nights following vaccination. Your immune system needs time to process the information, to build the memory cells, to create the antibodies that will protect you. If you're sleep deprived, you're essentially wasting part of the vaccine's potential. Your body is trying to learn, but it doesn't have the resources to finish the lesson. The same principle applies to natural infections. When you catch a cold or the flu, your body's ability to fight it off and recover depends heavily on how much you sleep. Studies have shown that people who sleep fewer than 6 hours a night are 4 times more likely to catch a cold when exposed to the virus compared to people who sleep 7 or 8 hours. It's not just about exposure. It's about whether your immune system is strong enough to stop the virus before it takes hold. And once you're sick, sleep becomes even more critical. During infection, your immune system ramps up the production of inflammatory cytokines, which make you feel tired, achy, and feverish. These symptoms are unpleasant, but they serve a purpose. They force you to rest, to stop moving, to give your body the time and energy it needs to fight. If you ignore these signals, if you push through and stay active, you prolong the illness and increase the risk of complications. Your immune system is asking for sleep because it needs sleep to do its job. There's also fascinating research on chronic sleep deprivation and immune suppression. People who consistently sleep fewer than 6 hours a night have lower baseline levels of immune cells and their blood-reduced antibody responses to vaccines, and higher levels of inflammatory markers that are associated with chronic disease. Over time, this weakened immune state can contribute to everything from frequent colds to more serious conditions like cardiovascular disease and even cancer. The link between sleep and cancer might sound dramatic, but it's supported by data. Shift workers who often have disrupted sleep schedules have a measurably higher risk of certain cancers compared to people who work regular daytime hours. The World Health Organization has classified night shift work as a probable carcinogen, partly because of the immune dysregulation that comes with chronic sleep disruption. But it's not just about the quantity of immune cells, it's also about their quality. Their ability to distinguish between real threats and harmless substances. Sleep helps calibrate this discrimination. When you don't sleep enough, your immune system can become overreactive, attacking things it shouldn't, like pollen or your own tissues. There's evidence that sleep deprivation is linked to higher rates of autoimmune diseases and allergies conditions where the immune system is confused targeting the wrong things because it hasn't had the time to learn properly. One of the common mistakes people make is thinking they can compensate for poor sleep by taking vitamins or supplements to boost their immune system. Vitamin C, zinc, echinacea. All of these are popular choices, and while some of them may have modest benefits, none of them can replace the role of sleep. Your immune system doesn't need more raw materials. It needs time. It needs the circadian regulated environment that only sleep provides, the hormonal signals, the reduced metabolic demands, the opportunity to focus entirely on defense and repair without interference from waking activity. Another mistake is pulling all-nighters, especially during times of stress like exams or work deadlines. The logic seems to make sense: sacrifice sleep. Now catch up. Later, get the work done. But what you're actually doing is suppressing your immune system at a time when you might need it most. Stress itself is immunosuppressive, and when you add sleep deprivation on top of stress, you create a perfect storm for getting sick. This is why so many people get sick right after finishing a big project or taking a final exam. Their immune system held on as long as it could, But once the stress passed and they finally tried to rest, the infections they had been holding back broke through. There's also the issue of inflammation, which is both a weapon and a danger. Acute inflammation, the kind that happens when you cut your finger or catch a virus, is protective. It brings immune cells to the site of injury or infection and helps eliminate the threat. But chronic inflammation, the kind that simmers quietly in your body for months or years, is destructive. It damages tissues, contributes to aging, and increases the risk of heart disease, diabetes, and dementia. Sleep regulates inflammation, keeping it under control, turning it on when needed, and turning it off when the danger has passed. Without adequate sleep, inflammation stays elevated, and your body slowly damages itself. Studies have measured inflammatory markers in people with chronic sleep deprivation, and the results are striking. Even young, healthy individuals who sleep fewer than 6 hours a night have significantly higher levels of C-reactive protein and interleukin, 6-2 markers of systemic inflammation. These aren't abstract numbers. They predict real health outcomes. People with elevated inflammatory markers have higher rates of heart attacks, strokes, and premature death, even if they seem healthy in every other way. And here's something that might change the way you think about sleep and sickness. When you sleep, your body doesn't just fight infections that are already present. It also builds a reserve, a stockpile of immune cells and molecules that can be deployed quickly when the next threat arrives. Sleep is preparation. It's training. It's the body making sure that when danger comes, and it will come, you're ready. Think about athletes again. They train their muscles, their cardiovascular systems, their reflexes. But they're also training their immune systems, often without realizing it. The athletes who sleep well recover faster from training, get sick less often, and perform better under pressure, not just because their muscles are stronger, but because their immune systems are stronger too. Sleep is part of the training regimen, as important as any workout. So, what does this mean for you right now, as you listen to this in the quiet of the night? It means that while you rest, your immune system is working harder than it did all day. T cells are moving through your lymph nodes, learning and remembering. Cytokines are coordinating responses, preparing for threats you haven't encountered yet. Your body temperature might rise slightly, creating an environment where infections can't thrive. Inflammation is being regulated, kept in balance, prevented from causing harm. You don't have to do anything to make this happen. You don't have to think about T cells or cytokines or lymph nodes. You just have to sleep, and your body will take care of the rest, the way it's been doing for as long as immune systems have existed. But this invisible army working through the night to keep you safe isn't the only thing happening in the darkness. There's another process unfolding, quieter, deeper. Something that determines not just how healthy you are, but who you are, what you remember, and how you'll think when you wake. Every experience you had today, every conversation, every sight, every thought is stored somewhere in your brain, but not permanently, not yet. Right now, those memories are fragile, scattered across different regions, held in temporary networks that will dissolve by morning if nothing is done to preserve them. Sleep is what saves them. While you drift through the night, your brain is quietly sorting through the day, deciding what matters, what should be kept, what can be forgotten. It's moving memories from short-term storage into long-term archives, strengthening some connections, pruning others, turning the chaos of experience into something coherent, something you can carry with you for years, or even the rest of your life. Memory consolidation. The process of turning temporary memories into permanent ones happens almost entirely during sleep. You might think memory works like recording a video, that everything you experience is simply saved as it happens. But that's not how the brain works. Memory is reconstruction. It's selection. It's the brain deciding, often without your awareness, what version of events to keep. And that decision, that transformation from fleeting impression to lasting knowledge, requires sleep. The discovery of sleep's role in memory came gradually over decades of research. In the 1990s, scientists began using brain imaging to watch what happens during sleep, and they noticed something strange. The hippocampus, a small seahorse-shaped structure deep in the brain that's critical for forming new memories, was extraordinarily active during sleep, sometimes even more active than during waking hours. It wasn't resting. It was replaying the day, firing the same patterns of neurons that had fired during actual experiences, but faster compressed, like watching a film on fast forward. In one famous experiment, researchers at MIT trained rats to run through a maze, then recorded the activity of neurons in their hippocampus. Each time a rat moved through the maze, certain neurons fired in a specific sequence, creating a kind of neural map of the path. Later, when the rats fell asleep, those same neurons fired again in the same sequence, but 7 times faster. The rats were dreaming about the maze replaying their route, and with each replay, the memory of that path grew stronger. Sleep wasn't passive rest. Sleep was practice repetition, the brain teaching itself what it had learned during the day. Humans do this too. Studies using functional MRI have shown that when people learn a new task like playing a melody on a piano or solving a puzzle, the brain regions involved in that task reactivate during sleep. The reactivation isn't random. It's targeted, focused on the things that were most important, most emotionally charged, or most difficult to learn. Your brain is choosing what to save, and it's using sleep to engrave those memories deeper into its structure. But sleep doesn't just strengthen memories. It also reorganizes them, pulling out patterns, making connections you didn't notice while awake. This is why solutions to problems sometimes appear in the morning, why a creative idea suddenly makes sense after you've slept on it. Your brain has been working on the problem all night, sifting through information, testing combinations, finding links between things that seemed unrelated during the day. Sleep is when insight happens, when the scattered pieces of knowledge rearrange themselves into something new. There are different stages of sleep, and each stage plays a different role in memory. Deep, slow-wave sleep, the kind that dominates the first half of the night, is particularly important for consolidating factual memories. The kind of information you might need to recall on a test, names, dates, concepts, procedures. During slow-wave sleep, your brain replays these memories over and over, transferring them from the hippocampus to the cortex, the outer layer of the brain where long-term memories are stored. The transfer isn't instantaneous. It takes time, repetition, and that only happens if you sleep long enough to cycle through multiple periods of deep sleep. REM sleep, the stage where most vivid dreaming occurs, seems to be more important for emotional memories and procedural skills, the kind of knowledge that involves doing rather than knowing, like riding a bike, playing an instrument, or recognizing someone's face. During REM sleep, your brain is highly active, almost as active as when you're awake, but in a very different way. Connections are being tested, strengthened, rearranged. The emotional intensity of experiences is being processed, integrated, made sense of. This is why REM sleep is so important for mental health, for recovering from trauma, for regulating mood. It's not just memory storage, it's emotional digestion. One of the most compelling demonstrations of sleep's importance for memory comes from studies on students. Researchers have repeatedly shown that students who sleep after studying perform significantly better on tests than students who stay awake even if the total amount of time between studying and testing is the same. In one study, students who learned a list of word pairs and then slept for 8 hours recalled 90% of the pairs the next day. Students who stayed awake for the same 8 hours recalled only 60%. The information was presented identically. The difference was sleep the time given for consolidation, for the memories to solidify. And it's not just about sleeping after learning. Sleeping before learning matters too. Studies show that sleep-deprived people have a harder time forming new memories, even when they're paying full attention. The hippocampus, already overwhelmed by the debris of yesterday's experiences, can't take in new information effectively. It's like trying to write on a whiteboard that's still covered in yesterday's notes. You need to erase the old to make room for the new, and sleep is what does the erasing. It clears out the temporary holding space so you can fill it again. This has profound implications for students, especially those who think they can study effectively by pulling all-nighters. The logic seems reasonable: more time studying equals better performance, but the biology says otherwise. If you stay up all night studying, you might cram more information into your short-term memory, but without sleep, very little of it will transfer to long-term storage. By the time you take the test, much of what you studied will have faded, slipped away, because your brain never had the chance to make it permanent. Sleeping for even a few hours before an exam is almost always better than studying for those same hours, because sleep is when the learning actually happens. There's also the issue of sleep spindles, brief bursts of brain activity that occur during stage 2, sleep a lighter stage that happens multiple times throughout the night. Sleep spindles look like little ripples on an EEG, rapid oscillations that last just a second or two, but they're incredibly important for memory. Research suggests that sleep spindles are moments when the hippocampus and cortex are communicating, when memories are being transferred from temporary to permanent storage. People who have more sleep spindles tend to have better memory consolidation, and anything that disrupts sleep spindles, like noise stress or sleep disorders, can impair memory formation. Interestingly, sleep spindles can be influenced. Studies have shown that playing certain sounds or using gentle electrical stimulation during sleep can increase the number of sleep spindles and improve memory performance the next day. This research is still in its early stages, but it suggests that sleep isn't just a passive process we undergo. It's an active state that can be enhanced, optimized, used more effectively if we understand how it works. But here's a mistake many people make. They assume that memory is about quantity, about cramming as much information as possible into their heads. But sleep-based memory consolidation is selective. Your brain doesn't save everything. It saves what it thinks is important, and importance is determined by things like emotional significance, repetition, and relevance to your goals. If you study something once and never think about it again, your brain will likely discard it during sleep, treating it as noise, as irrelevant detail that doesn't need to be kept. But if you review material multiple times, if you engage with it emotionally, if you connect it to things you already know, your brain recognizes it as important and prioritizes it for consolidation. This is why spaced repetition works so well for learning. Studying something sleeping, then reviewing it again, then sleeping again, creates multiple opportunities for consolidation, multiple chances for the memory to be strengthened, move deeper into storage. Each cycle of sleep adds another layer of permanence until the memory becomes so stable that it can last for decades. There's also fascinating research on forgetting, which isn't always a failure of memory. Sometimes forgetting is intentional, a necessary part of keeping your mind functional. If you remembered every single detail of every single day, your brain would be overwhelmed with irrelevant information, cluttered with things that don't matter. Sleep helps you forget the things you don't need, pruning away the weak connections, the unimportant details, leaving only what's useful. Forgetting isn't the opposite of remembering. It's part of the same process, two sides of the same coin, both happening during sleep. And then there's the question of dreams. Do they serve a purpose, or are they just random noise, the brain's screensaver, flickering while the real work happens in the background? The answer is still debated, but many researchers believe that dreams are part of memory consolidation, that they're the subjective experience of your brain sorting through information, testing connections, playing out scenarios. Dreams often mix elements from recent experiences with older memories, which suggests the brain is integrating new information with existing knowledge, finding patterns, making sense of things in ways that might not be possible while you're awake and thinking logically. Some dreams are bizarre, surreal, nonsensical, and that might be by design. When your brain is freed from the constraints of logic and reality, it can explore connections that would seem absurd during the day. And sometimes those absurd connections turn out to be useful, creative, insightful. Many artists, scientists, and inventors have reported that their best ideas came to them in dreams, not because dreams are magical, but because sleep allows the brain to think differently, to escape the ruts of habitual thought. But whether or not you remember your dreams, whether or not they feel meaningful, the memory work is happening. Every night, your hippocampus is replaying the day your cortex is strengthening connections. Your brain is deciding what to keep and what to let go. You wake up slightly different than you were the night before, carrying new knowledge, new skills, new understanding, all because you slept. Have you ever noticed how a song or a skill feels easier the day after you practice it, even though you didn't practice in between? That's sleep. That's your brain consolidating, refining, making permanent what was shaky and uncertain the day before. Sleep is the bridge between trying and knowing, between experiencing and remembering. And here's the beautiful, humbling truth. You can't force this process. You can't think your way into better memory consolidation. You just have to sleep and your brain will do the rest, sorting, filing, strengthening the way it's done, for as long as brains have been capable of learning. But while your brain is preserving the past, organizing what you've experienced into something you can keep, another system is quietly managing your future, shaping the choices you'll make, the cravings you'll feel, the way you'll navigate the day ahead. Every morning when you wake up, you feel hungry or you don't. You crave breakfast or you skip it. You reach for fruit or you want something sweet and heavy. These choices feel like they're yours, like they come from willpower or preference, but they don't, not entirely. They come from two hormones you've probably never heard of, leptin and ghrelin. And the balance between them is set the night before, during sleep, in a negotiation your body conducts without ever asking your opinion. If you sleep well, the balance tips toward control, toward feeling satisfied, toward making choices that serve you. If you don't sleep enough, the balance shifts the other way toward hunger, toward cravings, toward eating more than your body actually needs. Leptin is the hormone that tells your brain you've had enough. It's produced by your fat cells, and its job is to signal satiety to say, stop, you're full, you don't need more. When leptin levels are high, you feel satisfied. Content not particularly interested in food, but when leptin levels drop, that signal disappears and suddenly you're hungry again, even if you just ate, even if your body has more than enough stored energy. Leptin is the voice that says you're okay. You can stop now. Ghrelin is the opposite. It's the hunger hormone produced primarily in your stomach, and it rises when your stomach is empty, sending signals to your brain that say, eat now, you need fuel. Ghrelin makes food look appealing, makes you notice smells, makes your stomach growl. It's the voice that says, you're running low, you need to refuel. Together, leptin and ghrelin create a feedback loop, a system that's supposed to keep your energy intake matched to your energy needs, keeping you fed but not overfed hungry, when you need to be satisfied when you don't. But this system only works properly if you sleep. Research shows that when you sleep fewer than 6 hours a night, leptin levels drop by about 15%, and ghrelin levels rise by about 15%. 15% might not sound like much, but in terms of appetite regulation, it's enormous. You wake up feeling hungrier than you should, and the signal that normally tells you to stop eating is weakened, muted, barely there. Your body is telling you to eat more, even though you don't need more. And resisting that signal takes willpower you might not have, especially if you're already tired. The first major study to document this connection was published in 2004 by researchers at the University of Chicago. They brought healthy young men into a sleep lab and restricted their sleep to 4 hours a night for 2 nights. Just 2 nights. Blood tests showed that leptin dropped, ghrelin rose, and when asked about their hunger and food preferences, the sleep-deprived men reported being significantly hungrier and craving high-carbohydrate, high-calorie foods like sweet, salty snacks and starchy foods. They weren't craving vegetables or lean protein. They were craving cookies, chips bread, pasta, exactly the kinds of foods that spike blood sugar quickly and provide fast energy, which is what a sleep-deprived brain desperately wants. Your brain runs almost entirely on glucose, a simple sugar. And when you're sleep-deprived, your brain is working harder than usual just to stay functional, burning through glucose faster than normal. At the same time, sleep deprivation makes your cells less sensitive to insulin, the hormone that moves glucose from your blood into your cells. This combination in high demand and low efficiency creates a state that feels like starvation to your brain, even if your body has plenty of stored energy. So, your brain sends out signals, powerful signals demanding quick fuel, and those signals manifest as cravings for sugar and refined carbs, the fastest sources of glucose available. This isn't a character flaw. This isn't a lack of discipline. This is biology, a survival mechanism that worked well when food was scarce and sleep deprivation meant you were fleeing danger or hunting through the night. In that context, craving high-energy food made sense. It kept you alive. But in the modern world where food is abundant and sleep deprivation is self-imposed, the same mechanism drives you to overeat to consume more calories than you burn to gain weight. Not because you're lazy or weak-willed, but because your hormones are telling you to eat, and your willpower is already depleted by lack of sleep. Studies have consistently shown that people who sleep fewer than 6 hours a night consume an average of 300 extra calories per day compared to those who sleep 7 to 9 hours. 300 calories might not sound like much, but over a year that's more than 30 pounds of potential weight gain just from being slightly more hungry, slightly more drawn to calorie-dense foods. And the weight doesn't distribute evenly. Sleep deprivation is particularly associated with abdominal fat, the kind that surrounds your organs and contributes to metabolic disease, diabetes, heart disease, inflammation. There's also the issue of timing. When you're sleep deprived, you don't just eat more, you eat later. Ghrelin levels stay elevated into the evening, keeping you hungry long after dinner, leading to late-night snacking, which is particularly problematic because your metabolism slows down at night. Calories consumed late in the evening are more likely to be stored as fat rather than burned for energy, partly because your body is preparing for sleep, not activity, and partly because insulin sensitivity is naturally lower at night. Late-night eating driven by sleep deprivation creates a double burden, more calories consumed, and less efficient calorie use. Researchers have found that people who are sleep-deprived tend to eat more frequent meals and snacks throughout the day, especially in the late evening. In one study, participants who slept only 4 hours ate an extra meal's worth of calories between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. compared to those who slept 8 hours. That entire extra meal was driven by hormonal dysregulation, by ghrelin staying high and leptin staying low, convincing the body it needed more food even though it didn't. And it's not just about hunger. Sleep deprivation also affects the reward pathways in your brain, the circuits that make food feel pleasurable. Functional MRI studies have shown that when people are sleep deprived, the reward centers of their brains light up more intensely in response to images of high-calorie foods like pizza donuts and ice cream. At the same time, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for self-control and decision-making, shows reduced activity. So, not only are you hungrier, not only are you craving junk food, but your ability to resist those cravings is compromised. The part of your brain that would normally say no, that's not a good choice, is too tired to fight. This explains why diets so often fail when people aren't sleeping well. You can have the best meal plan, the best intentions, but if you're sleep deprived, your biology is working against you. You're fighting hunger that shouldn't be there, cravings that are hormonally driven, and diminished willpower because your brain is exhausted. It's like trying to run a race with weights tied to your legs. You might still finish, but it's so much harder than it needs to be. There's a common saying in nutrition circles, you can't out-exercise a bad diet. But there's another truth that's just as important and far less recognized. You can't out-diet a bad sleep schedule. No amount of calorie counting or meal prep can fully compensate for the hormonal chaos that comes from chronic sleep deprivation. If you want to lose weight, if you want to stop overeating, if you want to feel in control of your appetite, the first thing to fix isn't your diet. It's your sleep. Studies on weight loss interventions have shown this clearly. When people are put on calorie-restricted diets, those who sleep well lose more fat and preserve more muscle compared to those who are sleep-deprived even when the calorie deficit is identical. The sleep-deprived group loses weight too, but more of it comes from muscle, not fat, which is exactly the opposite of what you want. Muscle is metabolically active. It burns calories even at rest. And losing it makes future weight loss harder. Sleep deprivation doesn't just make you hungrier, it changes what your body does with the calories you do. Consume, shifting the balance toward fat, storage, and muscle loss. There's also emerging research on the gut microbiome, the trillions of bacteria that live in your digestive system and influence everything from digestion to mood to immune function. Sleep deprivation alters the composition of your gut microbiome in ways that promote weight gain and metabolic dysfunction. Certain beneficial bacteria decrease while bacteria associated with obesity and inflammation increase. This shift happens quickly within just a few days of sleep restriction, and it can persist even after you start sleeping normally again. Your gut, like your brain, needs consistent sleep to stay healthy. And when it doesn't get it, the consequences ripple out through your entire metabolism. And here's something that might surprise you. The timing of your meals can influence your sleep just as your sleep influences your eating. Eating late at night, especially foods high in sugar or fat, can disrupt your circadian rhythm, the internal clock that regulates sleep-wake cycles. Your digestive system has its own rhythm, its own optimal times for processing food, and when you eat outside those windows, especially close to bedtime, it can interfere with your ability to fall asleep and stay asleep. So, the relationship goes both ways. Poor sleep makes you eat poorly, and eating poorly makes you sleep poorly, creating a vicious cycle that's hard to break. But here's the hopeful part. The cycle can be broken, and it starts with sleep. Studies show that when people extend their sleep from 6 hours to 8 hours, leptin and ghrelin levels normalize within just a few days. Appetite decreases, cravings for junk food diminish, and people naturally consume fewer calories without consciously trying to restrict their intake. Sleep doesn't just make weight loss easier, it makes it almost automatic, because your body's hunger signals are finally working the way they're supposed to. One study followed overweight adults who were chronic short sleepers and simply asked them to extend their sleep by 1 hour per night. They weren't given a diet plan, weren't told to exercise more, weren't asked to change anything except their sleep. After 2 weeks, participants were consuming an average of 270 fewer calories per day compared to baseline, and they reported feeling more satisfied with smaller portions. Sleep gave them back the ability to listen to their bodies, to recognize fullness, to stop eating when they'd had enough. Think about how different that is from most weight loss advice, which focuses on restriction, on counting on willpower, on fighting your body's signals. Sleep doesn't require you to fight. It recalibrates the signals so you don't have to. It restores the balance between leptin and ghrelin, so your appetite matches your actual needs. So the choices that are good for you also feel natural, satisfying, right? And this isn't just about weight. The metabolic disruption caused by sleep deprivation contributes to insulin resistance, prediabetes, type 2. Diabetes, all conditions where the body loses its ability to regulate blood sugar effectively. Chronic sleep deprivation is now recognized as an independent risk factor for these diseases, meaning that even if you eat well and exercise regularly, not sleeping enough can still push you toward metabolic dysfunction. Sleep is foundational. It's not optional. It's not something you can skip and make up for in other ways. So, as you settle into sleep, now know that your body is working on something essential, something that will shape how you feel and what you choose in the morning. Leptin is rising, telling your brain that you're okay, that you have enough. Ghrelin is falling, quieting the hunger signals, letting you rest without the constant pull to eat. Your metabolism is recalibrating. Your cells are becoming more sensitive to insulin. Your gut bacteria are stabilizing. All of this happens quietly without your input, as long as you give your body the time it needs. But appetite and hunger aren't the only things your body regulates while you sleep. Deep within your cells, in the coiled strands of DNA that hold the instructions for everything you are, another kind of work is happening. A repair process so precise, so essential, that without it, you wouldn't last more than a few years. Let's go there now, into the smallest rooms of your body, where the most delicate work of all is being done. Inside, every cell in your body is a library, a coiled strand of DNA about 6 feet long, if you stretched it out, containing roughly 3 billion letters of genetic code, the instructions for building and maintaining you. Every second of every day, this code is being damaged. Ultraviolet light from the sun breaks chemical bonds. Free radicals, byproducts of your own metabolism, punch tiny holes in the strands. Cosmic rays from space, unavoidable and invisible, pass through your body and randomly scramble sequences. By the end of today, your DNA will have suffered tens of thousands of small injuries, mutations, that if left unrepaired could turn a healthy cell into a broken cell into a dangerous one into cancer. But your cells don't wait for disaster. Every night while you sleep, they send out repair crews, molecular machines that scan every inch of your DNA. Find the damage and fix it with astonishing precision, rewriting errors, splicing broken strands, restoring the code to what it should be. DNA. Repair happens all the time, even while you're awake, but it accelerates dramatically during sleep. The reason is tied to your circadian rhythm, the internal clock that governs nearly every biological process in your body. Certain genes that control DNA repair are more active at night, turned on by the same signals that make you feel sleepy, coordinated by a master clock in your brain that tracks the passage of day into night. When the sun goes down and darkness falls, your cells shift priorities. Energy that was spent on activity, on movement, on thinking is redirected toward maintenance, toward cleaning, toward repair. DNA. The most precious molecule you have gets its deepest attention during these quiet hours. One of the key players in this process is a gene called XPA, which is part of a repair system known as nucleotide excision repair. This system specializes in fixing damage caused by UV light, the kind that comes from the sun and can cause skin cancer if left unchecked. XPA and related genes follow a clear circadian pattern. They peak in activity during the late afternoon and evening, just after the time when UV exposure is highest, then continue working through the night, scanning your skin cells for damaged DNA and cutting out the broken sections, replacing them with fresh, undamaged sequences. It's like a copy editor going through a manuscript, finding typos, deleting them, and filling in the correct words. Research has shown that people who work night shifts, whose circadian rhythms are disrupted, because they're awake when they should be asleep, and asleep when they should be awake, have significantly higher rates of skin cancer, breast cancer, and colon cancer compared to people who work regular daytime hours. The International Agency for Research on Cancer, part of the World Health Organization, has classified night shift work as a probable carcinogen. Not because night shift work exposes you to toxic chemicals, but because it disrupts the timing of DNA repair, leaving mutations unfixed, allowing damaged cells to accumulate over years, over decades, until some of those cells cross the line from damaged to malignant. In one landmark study, researchers examined the DNA repair capacity of shift workers compared to people with regular sleep schedules. They exposed cells from both groups to UV radiation in a lab, then measured how quickly the cells could repair the damage. The cells from shift workers were significantly slower, taking up to twice as long to fix the same amount of damage. The machinery was still there, the genes were still functional, but the timing was off. The coordination was broken, and without that coordination, repair happened more slowly, less efficiently, leaving gaps that should have been closed. But it's not just shift workers who are at risk. Anyone who chronically sleeps fewer than 6 hours a night is experiencing a milder version of the same problem. Your circadian rhythm is still intact, but you're cutting short the window of time when DNA repair is most active. Imagine a team of workers who are supposed to have 8 hours to fix a building, but they're only given 5. They'll fix what they can, but some things will be left undone, and those unfinished repairs will accumulate day after day, year after year. DNA damage comes from more than just UV light. Oxidative stress. The chemical wear and tear that comes from breathing and burning fuel generates reactive molecules called free radicals, which attack DNA constantly. Your body produces antioxidants to neutralize these free radicals, but it's a constant battle, and sleep is when your cells get a chance to catch up on the backlog. During sleep, the production of antioxidant enzymes like superoxide, dismutase, and catalase increases, helping to mop up free radicals before they can do more harm. At the same time, repair enzymes move through the nucleus of each cell, scanning for oxidative damage, snipping out corrupted bases, and filling in the gaps with correct ones. There's also a fascinating connection between sleep and something called telomeres, the protective caps on the ends of your chromosomes. Telomeres are like the plastic tips on shoelaces. They keep the ends of your DNA from fraying. Every time a cell divides, its telomeres get a little shorter. And when they get too short, the cell can no longer divide. It becomes senescent, inactive, aged. Short telomeres are associated with aging disease and early death. But studies have shown that people who sleep well have longer telomeres than people who don't, even when age and lifestyle are controlled for. Sleep appears to protect telomeres, possibly by reducing oxidative stress, possibly by enhancing repair, possibly through mechanisms we don't fully understand yet. But the correlation is clear. Sleep preserves the length of your life at the most fundamental level, at the level of your chromosomes. And then there's the brain, which has its own unique DNA repair challenges. Neurons, the cells that make up your brain, almost never divide, which means they have to last your entire life. A skin cell that gets damaged can be replaced. A neuron that gets damaged has to be repaired, or it's lost forever. This makes DNA repair in the brain absolutely critical, and sleep is when most of it happens. Studies on fruit flies, whose neurons are surprisingly similar to ours, have shown that DNA damage accumulates in the brain during waking hours and is cleared during sleep. Flies that are kept awake for extended periods show a buildup of DNA breaks in their neurons, and if the sleep deprivation continues long enough, those neurons begin to die. Sleep isn't optional for brain health. It's essential for keeping your neurons alive. In humans, chronic sleep deprivation has been linked to increased risk of neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, and part of the reason may be unrepaired DNA damage. When neurons can't fix their DNA, they become dysfunctional. They stop communicating properly. They produce toxic proteins. They eventually die. The loss of neurons is what causes memory, decline, motor problems, personality changes, all the devastating symptoms of neurodegeneration. Sleep, by allowing DNA repair to happen, protects against this decline, keeps your neurons functional, preserves who you are for as long as possible. There's also the concept of beauty sleep, which turns out to be real science, not just a saying. Your skin cells are among the fastest dividing cells in your body, constantly renewing themselves, replacing old cells with new ones. But cell division requires perfect DNA. If a skin cell divides with damaged DNA, it passes that damage onto its daughter cells, and over time this accumulation of errors shows up as wrinkles, age spots, thinning skin, all the visible signs of aging. Sleep allows skin cells to repair their DNA before dividing, ensuring that new cells are built from clean blueprints, not corrupted ones. People who sleep poorly age faster, not just internally, but visibly in their skin, because their cells are dividing with unrepaired damage, accelerating the aging process in ways that can be seen in a mirror. In one study, researchers photographed people after a full night of sleep, and again after a night of sleep deprivation, then showed the photos to independent observers who rated how old, how healthy, and how attractive each person looked. The sleep-deprived photos were consistently rated as older, less healthy, and less attractive. Part of that was puffiness and dark circles, but part of it was something deeper, something in the skin itself, a dullness, a loss of vitality that comes from cells not being able to repair and renew themselves properly. One night made a visible difference. Imagine what years of poor sleep do. But DNA repair isn't just about preventing cancer and aging, it's also about fertility. Sperm and egg cells carry your DNA to the next generation. And if that DNA is damaged, it can lead to infertility, miscarriage, or birth defects. Studies have shown that men who sleep poorly have higher rates of DNA fragmentation in their sperm, meaning the genetic material they're passing on is broken incomplete, less likely to result in a healthy pregnancy. Women who don't sleep well have been shown to have lower quality eggs with more chromosomal abnormalities, which can make conception harder and increase the risk of miscarriage. Sleep protects not just your own DNA, but the DNA you might pass on the instructions for the next generation. And here's a mistake many people make. They think that DNA damage is something that happens to other people, people who smoke or spend too much time in the sun or work with chemicals. But DNA damage happens to everyone every day just from being alive, just from existing in a world full of radiation, pollution, and the normal byproducts of metabolism. You can't avoid it, but you can give your body the time it needs to fix it, and that time is sleep. Another common mistake is thinking that DNA repair is something you can enhance with supplements, with antioxidants, with expensive creams or pills. And while some nutrients do support repair processes, they can't replace the circadian regulated timing that makes repair efficient. Your cells don't just need the raw materials for repair. They need the right signals, the right hormones, the right environment. And all of that is orchestrated by your internal clock, by the cycle of waking and sleeping that your ancestors followed for millions of years. You can take all the supplements in the world, but if you're not sleeping, the repair won't happen the way it should. There's also emerging research on sleep and epigenetics, the chemical modifications to your DNA that don't change the sequence but do change which genes are turned on or off. Sleep influences these modifications, helping to silence genes that promote inflammation and disease, while activating genes that promote repair and longevity. Sleep deprivation disrupts these epigenetic patterns, turning on the wrong genes, silencing the right ones, creating a cellular environment that favors aging and disease over health and repair. Epigenetics is like the volume knob on your genes, and sleep is what keeps the volume set correctly. Think about what this means. Every night you sleep well is a night your DNA is being maintained, your mutations are being fixed, your cells are being kept functional. Every night you don't is a night when errors accumulate, when damage goes unrepaired, when your cells drift a little closer to dysfunction, to disease, to the kind of breakdown that takes decades to manifest, but is built one sleepless night at a time. Your DNA is being repaired right now as you rest, as you drift. Enzymes are scanning, snipping, filling, restoring. Telomeres are being protected. Neurons are being preserved. Skin cells are preparing to divide from clean blueprints. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to will it to happen. You just have to sleep, and your body will do the rest the way it's been doing since the first cells learned to protect their genetic code. But DNA isn't the only thing your body is working on through the night. There's another organ one you might not think of as needing rest that's actually running its busiest shift right now, processing everything you consume today, filtering toxins, breaking down waste, preparing your blood for the day ahead. Let's follow that work now into the largest internal organ you have, the one that knows no rest but works hardest when you do. Your liver weighs about 3 pounds and sits quietly beneath your rib cage on the right side of your body, doing work you never think about and rarely notice. It filters every drop of blood in your body, processes everything you eat and drink, neutralizes toxins, breaks down medications, stores vitamins, produces bile, regulates blood sugar, manufactures proteins, and performs more than 500 other functions that scientists are still cataloging. It's the largest internal organ you have, and unlike your heart or lungs, which work at a steady rhythm all day and night, your liver follows a schedule. Between 1 and 3 a.m., when your body is deepest in sleep, your liver reaches peak detoxification activity, running what ancient Chinese medicine called the liver's time, a window, when this organ does its most intensive cleaning, filtering out the chemical debris of the day and preparing your blood for morning. The liver's connection to circadian rhythm has been known intuitively for thousands of years. Traditional Chinese medicine divided the day into 12 two-hour periods, each governed by a different organ, and the liver's time was always between 1 and 3 a.m. Practitioners observed that liver-related symptoms, pain, nausea, sluggishness, often peaked during these hours, and they interpreted this as the liver working hardest, clearing stagnation, moving energy. Modern science using molecular biology and circadian research has confirmed that this ancient observation was remarkably accurate. The liver does have a peak time, and it is at night regulated by genes that respond to darkness, to fasting, to the hormonal signals that accompany sleep. Detoxification in the liver happens in two main phases. Phase 1 uses a family of enzymes called cytochrome P4,5-OIGs to chemically modify toxins, making them more water-soluble so they can be flushed out of the body. This process often creates intermediate compounds that are actually more reactive and potentially more harmful than the original toxin, which is why Phase 2 is so important. Phase 2, enzymes attach small molecules like glutathione, sulfate, or glucuronic acid to these intermediates, neutralizing them, making them safe, preparing them for excretion through urine or bile. Both phases follow circadian rhythms, and both are most active during the night, during sleep, when your digestive system is quiet, when blood flow to the liver is optimized, when the liver can focus entirely on cleanup, without having to process new food or manage blood sugar spikes. Research has shown that the genes controlling these detoxification enzymes are under circadian control, turned on by a master clock in your brain and fine-tuned by local clocks in liver cells themselves. When you disrupt your sleep schedule, when you stay up late or work night shifts, these clocks get out of sync. The liver tries to detoxify at the wrong times or not efficiently enough, and toxins that should have been neutralized linger in your bloodstream, longer circulating, causing low-grade damage to tissues throughout your body. This is one reason why shift workers have higher rates of liver disease, metabolic syndrome, and certain cancers. Their livers are being asked to clean at the wrong times when the enzymes aren't fully active, when the coordination is broken. Alcohol is one of the substances the liver works hardest to process, and it's a perfect example of how timing matters. When you drink alcohol, your liver breaks it down using an enzyme called alcohol dehydrogenase, which converts ethanol into acetaldehyde, a toxic compound that causes many of the unpleasant effects of drinking: the flush face, the nausea, the headache. Another enzyme, aldehyde dehydrogenase, quickly converts acetaldehyde into acetate, which is harmless and can be used for energy. This two-step process is efficient, but it's also demanding, requiring resources, generating oxidative stress, and temporarily monopolizing the liver's attention. If you drink alcohol late at night, close to bedtime, you're asking your liver to process alcohol during the same hours. It's supposed to be doing deep detoxification work, cleaning up everything else from the day. The liver can't do both jobs well at the same time. It prioritizes alcohol because acetaldehyde is immediately toxic. But that means other toxins, other metabolic waste gets backlogged, left for later, building up in ways that contribute to long-term damage. This is one reason why heavy drinkers often develop liver disease, even if they're drinking the same total amount as someone who spreads their drinking earlier in the day. timing compounds the burden. There's also the issue of medications. Many drugs are processed by the same liver enzymes that detoxify other substances, and those enzymes follow circadian patterns. Some medications work better when taken at night because liver enzyme activity is higher, meaning the drug is broken down more efficiently, cleared from the system, faster, reducing the risk of side effects. Other medications work better when taken in the morning because they are metabolized more slowly at night, allowing for longer-lasting effects. Chronopharmacology. The study of how drug effectiveness varies with time of day is a growing field, and it's revealing that when you take a medication can be just as important as what medication you take. For example, statins, drugs used to lower cholesterol, are often prescribed to be taken at night because the liver produces most of its cholesterol between midnight and early morning. Taking the statin at night interrupts this production at its peak, making the drug more effective. Similarly, certain blood pressure medications work better at night because blood pressure naturally dips during sleep, and taking the medication too early can cause it to wear off before morning, when blood pressure naturally rises again. Your liver and the drugs it processes operate on a schedule, and aligning with that schedule improves outcomes. But the liver doesn't just process external toxins like alcohol and medications. It also handles internal waste, the byproducts of your own metabolism. Every time your cells burn fuel, they produce waste products like ammonia, which is toxic to the brain, and must be converted into urea, a less harmful compound that can be excreted by the kidneys. This conversion happens in the liver continuously, but it's most efficient during sleep when your digestive system isn't demanding resources, when blood flow to the liver is stable and uninterrupted. People with liver disease often experience something called hepatic encephalopathy, where ammonia builds up in the blood and causes confusion, disorientation, and eventually coma. One of the contributing factors is poor sleep, which prevents the liver from clearing ammonia effectively. There's also the role of bile, a digestive fluid produced by the liver and stored in the gallbladder. Bile helps break down fats, but it also serves as a vehicle for excreting toxins, heavy metals, and waste products that can't be filtered through the kidneys. Bile production and flow follow a circadian rhythm, peaking during the day when you're eating and slowing at night. But the composition of bile, the concentration of waste products it carries, is influenced by how well your liver detoxified during the night. If your liver didn't have time to process everything, the bile is less effective and waste products can accumulate, crystallize, and form gallstones. People who skip breakfast, who fast for too long in the morning, often have higher rates of gallstones because the bile sits stagnant in the gallbladder, giving waste products time to solidify. Sleep, by optimizing liver function, helps keep bile flowing smoothly, reducing that risk. And here's something many people don't realize. The liver stores glycogen, a form of glucose, and releases it into your bloodstream during the night to keep your blood sugar stable while you're not eating. This process is carefully regulated by circadian rhythms and hormones like cortisol and growth hormone, which rise in the early morning hours to prepare your body for waking. If you're not sleeping well, if your sleep is fragmented or too short, this glucose regulation gets disrupted. Your liver might release too much glucose, causing high morning blood sugar, or too little, causing you to wake up feeling shaky, dizzy, or weak. Chronic disruption of this process contributes to insulin resistance, prediabetes, and type 2 diabetes, all conditions where the liver's ability to manage glucose is impaired. Studies on shift workers have shown that they have significantly higher rates of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, a condition where fat accumulates in the liver even without alcohol consumption. The mechanism isn't fully understood, but it's believed that circadian disruption impairs the liver's ability to metabolize fats, leading to buildup inflammation and eventually scarring. Non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is now one of the most common liver conditions in the world, and it's closely linked to poor sleep, irregular eating times, and disrupted circadian rhythms, all hallmarks of modern life. There's a common mistake people make, thinking they can help their liver by doing cleanses, by drinking special juices, by taking detox supplements. The liver doesn't need help from external products. It's already the most efficient detoxification system you have evolved over millions of years to handle an enormous range of toxins and waste products. What it needs is time, the right conditions, the circadian alignment that allows its enzymes to work at peak efficiency. No juice cleanse can replace the detoxification that happens during a full night of deep sleep. If anything, extreme cleanses, especially those that involve fasting or harsh laxatives, can stress the liver further by forcing it to process waste too quickly, without the hormonal support and enzymatic coordination it needs. Another mistake is eating late at night, especially large meals or foods high in fat and sugar. When you eat close to bedtime, your liver has to switch from detoxification mode to digestion mode, processing incoming nutrients instead of clearing out stored waste. This not only delays detoxification, but also disrupts the liver's circadian rhythm, confusing the internal clock, making the enzymes less synchronized. Over time, chronic late-night eating can lead to metabolic dysfunction, weight gain, insulin resistance, and liver disease. Not because the food itself is harmful, but because the timing interferes with the liver's natural work schedule. There's also the issue of sleep apnea, a condition where breathing repeatedly stops and starts during the night, causing brief awakenings and drops in blood oxygen. Sleep apnea has been strongly linked to liver disease, particularly non-alcoholic fatty liver disease and liver fibrosis. The mechanism is thought to involve chronic inflammation and oxidative stress, both of which are worsened by the repeated oxygen deprivation that happens during apnea episodes. The liver, trying to detoxify in an environment of low oxygen and high inflammation, becomes damaged over time, developing fat deposits, scarring, and eventually losing function. Treating sleep apnea with devices like CPAP machines that keep the airway open has been shown to improve liver health, reduce inflammation, and slow the progression of liver disease. And there's a lesson here about listening to your body. If you wake up feeling nauseous, if you feel a dull ache under your ribs on the right side, if you have a bitter taste in your mouth, these can be signs that your liver is struggling, that it's overloaded, that it didn't have enough time to finish its work. Traditional medicine recognized these signs as liver stagnation, and the remedy was always the same: rest, lighter eating, giving the body time to catch up. Modern science agrees. Your liver needs time, needs regularity, needs the predictable rhythm of eating during the day and fasting at night, of sleeping deeply and waking rested, of giving the circadian clock clear, consistent signals, so every enzyme knows when to work. Think about what your liver is doing right now. It's filtering your blood, pulling out toxins, neutralizing them, preparing them for removal. It's breaking down old red blood cells, recycling their components, making new proteins for your blood. It's regulating your blood sugar, ensuring your brain has fuel, even though you haven't eaten in hours. It's processing the remnants of every substance you consumed today, every medication, every additive, every molecule that wasn't food but got into your body anyway. It's doing all of this quietly, without fanfare, without your awareness, asking only for the time and conditions it needs to work. You can't see your liver, you can't feel it working, but it's there beneath your ribs, performing alchemy, turning poison into safety waste, into fuel chaos, into order. And it does this best when you sleep, when the world is quiet, when your body is still, when every system can focus on maintenance instead of survival. But the liver isn't working alone. Every organ, every system, every cell is part of the same symphony, all of them playing their parts, all of them contributing to the single goal of keeping you alive, keeping you whole. And as we've traveled through the night through all these hidden processes, we've seen something remarkable, something worth pausing to appreciate before the night ends and morning arrives. 37 trillion cells. That's how many are working inside you right now, each one a universe unto itself. Each one performing hundreds of chemical reactions every second, each one connected to every other through signals, through shared resources, through a common purpose that None of them individually understands, but all of them collectively achieve. They are cleaning your brain, rebuilding your muscles, training your immune system, consolidating your memories, balancing your hunger, repairing your DNA, detoxifying your blood. They are doing all of this without asking permission, without requiring your attention, without needing you to understand or even believe in the process. They are doing it because this is what life does. Life maintains itself. Life repairs itself. Life remembers how to be whole. And the extraordinary thing, the thing that should stop you in wonder every single night, is that all of this work, this invisible symphony of maintenance and renewal, happens best when you do nothing, when you stop moving, when you close your eyes, when you let go of control and trust that your body knows what it needs. Sleep is not the absence of activity. Sleep is the presence of a different kind of work, deeper work, the kind that can only happen when you stop demanding performance from a system that also needs time to restore itself. We've walked through the night together, following the secret shifts, the hidden labor that keeps you alive. We started in your brain, watching cerebrospinal fluid wash through widened spaces, flushing out toxic proteins that would otherwise accumulate into plaques and tangles, the kind that steal memory, that erase identity, that turn a functioning mind into a fading one. We saw how this cleaning only happens during deep sleep, how your brain cells literally shrink to make room for the tide, how a single night without sleep leaves debris behind, and how years of poor sleep can lead to diseases that have no cure, only prevention, only the simple act of sleeping deeply and sleeping enough. We moved into your muscles, your skin, your hair, watching ribosomes stitch together, proteins at twice their daytime speed, responding to a surge of growth hormone that only comes at night, that only comes if you sleep. We saw how athletes recover, how wounds heal, how children grow, all dependent on this nightly pulse of reconstruction, this signal from your pituitary gland that tells every cell in your body to rebuild what was broken, to replace what was lost, to prepare for the next day's demands. We learned that you can eat all the protein in the world, but without sleep, the construction doesn't finish. The repairs don't hold, and your body slowly wears itself down faster than it can rebuild. We stepped into your immune system, watching T cells patrol your lymph nodes, learning, remembering, preparing for threats they haven't encountered yet. We saw how sleep doubles the effectiveness of vaccines, how it quadruples your resistance to colds, how it keeps inflammation in check so your body doesn't damage itself in the act of defending itself. We learned that sleep is not rest for your immune system. It's training, it's preparation. It's the difference between a body that fights off disease and a body that succumbs to it. And we saw how shift workers whose sleep is chronically disrupted pay for that disruption with higher rates of cancer infection and autoimmune disease. We drifted into your hippocampus, that small seahorse-shaped structure, deep in your brain, where memories are born, and we watched it replay the day at 7 times normal speed, transferring fragile impressions from temporary storage into permanent archives, making sense of experience, finding patterns, creating the continuity of self that lets you wake up tomorrow still knowing who you are. We learned that memory is not recording, it's reconstruction, and the reconstruction happens during sleep, during dreams, during those strange hours when your brain is free to think without logic, to connect without constraint, to turn the chaos of the day into something you can carry with you for a lifetime. We followed the signals of leptin and ghrelin, the hormones that tell you when to eat and when to stop. And we saw how sleep keeps them balanced, how just one night of poor sleep tips the scales toward hunger, toward craving, toward eating more than you need, and storing it as fat you don't want. We learned that you can't out-diet a bad sleep schedule, that willpower is no match for hormones, and that every failed diet, every moment of weakness in front of the fridge at midnight might not be a failure of character, but a biological response to a body that's been denied, the rest it needs to regulate itself. We descended into the nucleus of your cells, into the coiled strands of DNA that hold the instructions for everything you are. And we watched repair enzymes scan for damage, cut out broken sequences, fill in the gaps with fresh code. We saw how UV light, oxidative stress, cosmic rays, all the invisible forces that constantly attack your genetic material, are countered by a repair system that works hardest at night, regulated by circadian rhythms, coordinated by genes that know when to work and when to rest. We learned that shift workers get cancer more often not because of what they're exposed to, but because of when they're awake, because their DNA repair happens at the wrong times, leaving mutations unfixed, letting damaged cells accumulate until some of them turn malignant. And we ended in your liver, that 3-pound chemical factory beneath your ribs, processing toxins, metabolizing drugs, regulating blood sugar, producing bile, doing 500 jobs at once, and doing most of them best between 1 and 3 a.m. during what ancient medicine called the liver's time, a window that modern science has confirmed with molecular precision. We saw how alcohol medications, late-night meals, all of them interfere with the liver's detoxification work, how timing matters as much as quantity, and how a liver that never gets its full shift, that's constantly interrupted by poor sleep or irregular schedules, eventually breaks down, accumulates fat, develops disease, loses the ability to protect you from the chemicals and waste products that would otherwise poison you slowly from within. All of this, every process, every system, every microscopic act of maintenance and repair is happening right now as you listen, as you drift. And the remarkable thing is that you don't have to do anything to make it happen. You don't have to think about glymphatic flow, or protein synthesis, or T-cell activation, or memory consolidation, or DNA repair, or liver detoxification. You don't have to manage any of it, coordinate any of it, understand any of it. You just have to sleep. You just have to stop asking your body to perform and give it the time. It's asking for the time it's been asking for since the first organisms learned that survival required not just activity, but recovery, not just work, but rest. We live in a world that has forgotten this, a world that celebrates the person who sleeps 4 hours and works 20, that sees rest as laziness, that treats sleep as optional, as something you do when there's nothing more important to do, which there always is. We've built cities that never sleep, screens that glow all night, jobs that demand availability at all hours. And we've paid for this with our health, with our minds, with years of life lost, not dramatically but incrementally. One night at a time, one skipped hour at a time, one disrupted rhythm at a time. But your cells don't care about productivity. They don't care about deadlines or ambitions or the myth that you can sleep when you're dead. They care about staying functional, about keeping you alive. And they're trying to tell you every single night that without rest, without the time to clean and rebuild and repair, you start to fall apart in ways that can't be undone, in ways that show up decades later as diseases that seem to come from nowhere, but were actually built slowly night after night from accumulated damage that was never given the chance to heal. There's a question that's worth asking yourself quietly, honestly, without judgment. When was the last time you woke up feeling truly rested, not just awake, not just functional, but restored, clear, ready? Like your body had been given everything it needed and had used that time. Well, if you can't remember if it's been weeks or months or years, then you're living in a deficit, borrowing from a reserve that's not infinite trading future health for present productivity in a deal that always costs more than you think it will. But here's the hopeful part, the part that makes all of this worth knowing. Sleep is not complicated. It doesn't require expensive interventions or specialized knowledge. It requires time. It requires darkness. It requires consistency. It requires that you treat it not as an inconvenience, but as a biological necessity, as fundamental as breathing, as eating, as drinking water. And when you give your body that gift, when you prioritize sleep, not because you believe in it, but because the science is undeniable, because 37 trillion cells are depending on you to give them the time they need, everything starts to improve. Memory sharpens, mood stabilizes, hunger normalizes, Skin clears, immunity strengthens, inflammation drops, energy returns. Not overnight, not magically, but gradually, measurably. The way healing always happens when you stop interfering with it and let your body do what it knows how to do. Every night is an opportunity. Every night is a chance to give your brain the time to clean itself, your muscles, the time to rebuild your immune system, the time to train your memory, the time to consolidate your appetite, the time to recalibrate your DNA, the time to repair your liver, the time to detoxify. Every night is a chance to honor the biology that keeps you alive, the systems that work tirelessly on your behalf, asking only for the conditions they need to do their job. And the beautiful, humbling truth is that you are never alone in the darkness. You are never simply unconscious, never merely absent. You are full of light, full of work, full of invisible hands that reach into every corner of your body and make you whole again night after night for as long as you let them. Sleep is not shutting down. Sleep is opening up. Sleep is the body's way of saying, I can take care of this. I know what to do. Just give me the time. So tonight, as you finally drift all the way into sleep, as your breath slows and your mind quiets and your body settles into the work it's been waiting to do, know that you are being cared for. Know that 37 trillion cells are beginning their shift, that your brain is preparing to clean itself, that your muscles are preparing to rebuild, that your immune system is preparing to defend you, that your memories are preparing to be saved, that your DNA is preparing to be repaired, that your liver is preparing to detoxify. Know that all of this is happening, not because you earned it, not because you deserve it, but because this is what life does. This is what your body does. This is the gift of being alive. You don't need to understand everything. You don't need to control anything. You just need to rest and let the night do its work the way it always has, the way it always will, as long as you give it the chance. Sleep well. Dream gently. Let your body remember how to be whole. Good night. And thank you truly for spending this quiet night with me, for letting these words accompany you toward rest. If you found comfort here, if you learned something that changes the way you think about sleep, I hope you'll return. There are so many more stories to tell softly, so many more wonders hidden in the ordinary moments of being alive. Until we meet again in the quiet, take care of yourself. Sleep deeply. Your cells are waiting.